welcome to the Animal Training Academy Making Ripples podcast show, the show where we share the stories of the ripple-making extraordinaires with behavior nerd superpowers who make up the Animal Training Academy membership. I'm your host and one of the happiness engineers at Animal Training Academy, Shelley Wood from Drop Your Jaws Dog Training in Cape Girardeau, Missouri in the United States. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful to have you here with us today. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a single episode. This show is brought to you on behalf of the Animal Training Academy membership. So if you like the conversations in these episodes, then we want to invite you to continue them with like-minded people in the ATA membership, which you can find out more about at www.atamember.com. Within the membership, you can get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalog of previous web class replays, plus a huge library of videos and projects to help you problem solve your training challenges. And we're a sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group and forums area. It's like a Netflix social media platform for animal behavior geeks. Today, we are excited to welcome Olly Jacobs and Calum Torcasio to the show. Olly Jacobs, him. After moving to Melbourne for university, Olly took advantage of living in the city to gain hands-on experience and work toward his dream job as a zookeeper. He completed his university work placement at Moonlit Sanctuary and was invited back to be a volunteer shortly after. In 2018, Olly was offered his first zookeeping position and joined Moonlit Sanctuary as a member of the reptile team. Always happy to give anything a go, Olly gladly accepted every learning opportunity thrown his way and quickly developed a keen interest in animal training. He was over the moon when he was offered his first ever animal training project, desensitization and tactile work with a young python named Pedro. After working in multiple departments, Olly is now living his best life as part of the show and logistics team and the mammal team, and loves having the chance to build relationships and work closely with so many different species. And Calum Torcasio, they, them. Calum completed their Certificate 3 in captive animals at the start of 2018, working with a range of animals throughout their placements with Zoos Victoria. Despite thoroughly enjoying their experiences with the exotic species they worked with during their course, their love of native animals meant they were extra excited to be offered a volunteer position at Moonlit Sanctuary. Quickly after starting, Calum was snatched up by the education department and began creating connections between school kids and the incredible native species right on their doorstep. At the end of the year, Calum joined the Moonlit Sanctuary keeping team, initially working with reptiles, but quickly dipping their toes into several departments. Currently, Calum is a member of the show and logistics team, as well as the mammal team. Having always had a passion for animal training, Calum loves having the opportunity to train a wide range of behaviors with many different species and getting to show our visitors just how amazing Australian animals are. Calum, Olly, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Very excited to have both of you here today. For our listeners, some folks may not know all the different components that Animal Training Academy has to offer, but one piece of the resources that we have in Animal Training Academy are forums where people can share more detailed explorations of training projects. And a lot of folks from Moonlit share frequently in the forums. And I shared with both of you before, I always get really excited when I see a post from either one of you. You both have just spectacular training skills and do a great job, not just of sharing videos of your training, but writing up exactly what you're working on and your goals and assessing your training projects and making adaptations to move forward. And so it's always a real pleasure to watch you train and to see the variety of lovely animals that you get to work with. So I'm really excited to have you both here today. And I would love it if you would each start us off by telling us a little bit about your story, just a little bit about kind of maybe have you always been an animal person, and how did you come to start working with animals, and how'd you wind up at Moonlit? Which one of you wants to take this first?
I'm happy to go first. I have always had a passion for animals. I was always interested in them. There's lots of photos of me when I was younger, patting different Australian animals and wanting to interact with them and all those kinds of things. And then when I was in high school, I was looking at possible career opportunities and paths to take. And, there's being a vet, that's a way to work with animals. But I really liked the idea of having a relationship with animals and getting to work with them. And, caring for animals as a vet is a very important job, but it's just not quite what I was looking for. And then I was thinking about, do I want to work with domesticated animals? No, that's not quite what I want to do. And then I saw the TAFE course that I ended up doing. So it's focused on zoo industry experience and understanding how that works and getting practical experience in that industry. And I got to do that at Zoos Victoria, so the government zoo in the state of Victoria here, and got a lot of amazing experience working with not just Australian natives, but also exotic animals, things like elephants and giraffe and servals and cheetah and all kinds of different animals. It was amazing. But I still really love our Australian animals because they're so unique and different from a lot of the animals you see everywhere else. So from there, after I finished my course, I applied to be a volunteer at Moonlit Sanctuary, and everyone really enjoys volunteering at Moonlit. So the wait list is quite a long wait. So I think I waited about a year and a half to get that position. And from there, it was kind of history. I just loved everything I got to do. I wasn't 100% sure which team I really wanted to be on because I don't really have a favorite kind of animal to work with. I just love working with animals. And I think I felt that animal training was my favorite thing. So it didn't really matter what it was that I was working with. It was how I was working with them and getting to do voluntary behaviors so that our animals are choosing to do what we're asking of them is something that I really take a lot of enjoyment out of. I want the animals to enjoy working with me as much as I enjoy working with them. So getting to eventually be on show and mammals has really helped me to flourish with that idea, because on our show department where we bring animals out in front of audiences and they're doing free flight or they're gliding to us as gliders, or dingoes running out on stage off lead in front of that audience, that's all very voluntary. The animals don't have to do what we're asking of them, but because we have that relationship with them and we have that training with them, we're able to do quite a lot, and there's a lot of trust there. So it's definitely the area where I knew I wanted to be, but I didn't know how it was going to look when I got there. And I'm very lucky to have gotten where I am now.
And we're very lucky that you share some of that with us, like I said, in the forums and also in the ATA Facebook group. And you mentioned that Australia has a lot of really cool species there. And you all are, it's not unusual for you two or somebody else from Moonlit to post something in the forums about a new animal that someone is working with. And I have to Google it, like, what is that? I've never heard of this. So definitely a wide variety of really cool animals. So thank you for sharing a little bit of your background with us, Calum. And Olly, what about you? How did you come to work with animals and make it to Moonlit?
Well, very similar to Calum, I've always loved animals. And when I was little, I wanted to be a zookeeper, but it wasn't until I was older that I went, hang on, being a zookeeper isn't like when a toddler wants to be a cowboy or an astronaut. A zookeeper, I mean, not that being an astronaut isn't a real job, but being a zookeeper is actually an option. It's just not quite as easy as some of the other options you can possibly choose. But I decided, let's stick with that and let's go try and be a zookeeper, because that certainly sounds like the funnest thing to do. but I originally grew up in the country, so I was always 2 or 3 hours away from the nearest zoo. So when I did finish high school and I moved to Melbourne to start uni, it was not just the opportunity to go and do my degree, but also an opportunity to be closer to zoos and actually start trying to get my foot in the door and start doing some of that hands-on industry experience. So through uni, I was able to organize doing a 2-week work placement at Moonlit, and it was, up until that point, the best 2 weeks of my whole entire life. It was so satisfying to have that confirmation that, yep, this is exactly what I want to do. It's always nice to know that you're heading in the right direction. And then I was quite lucky. I got to jump the queue a little bit when it came to volunteering. There just kind of happened to be an opening, and I'd obviously done an all right job whilst on placement and was invited back as a volunteer. And then, was lucky enough later down the line that there was an opening on the reptile team, and I was offered the position, I got the call the day after my 21st birthday, and it is still to this day one of the best days of my entire life. I'll never forget that. But then at the start, I was like, I will be a zookeeper with any animal. I don't care what I do, where I do it, how I do it. I just want to be in this job and be doing this. And then through working with the animals and being in the position and getting all of that experience, I started getting really interested in animal training. And when I eventually was lucky enough to get asked if I was interested in being part of the show team, I leapt on it immediately. I was over the moon. Getting the opportunity to be on stage and introduce people to the animals, and even introduce people to animals that they might live really close to but have also never heard of. There are plenty of times where we'll come on stage and say, this is a potoroo, and people that have lived in Australia their whole lives will say, I've never heard of that. So you're certainly not the only one there. But being able to introduce people to animals that live right on their doorstep and they've never heard of them, but they've got such an important role in the ecosystem is really, really special. And being able to create those connections and, encourage people to make little changes in their life by, just doing really simple things that really help the animals is, it's the best job ever, hands down.
Both your stories do have some similarities. I feel like both of you are just so passionate, and I love that both of you started. I'm just sitting here smiling from ear to ear as each of you are talking, because your passion and your love for what you do really shines through. And it seems like your stories both followed a very similar trajectory in that you both kind of had a dream about being an animal trainer and had the motivation to put in the effort to see that through by first each getting an education. You with, is it Taft with a T or TAFE? TAFE with an E at the end? What is that right? TAFE with an E at the end, Calum?
Yeah.
It sounds like that's a really extensive program as well.
Yeah, it was very in-depth, and we did a lot of theory, but a lot of practical experience. We did placements on different departments, got to work with natives, as I said, with elephants at Werribee Zoo, which is a big variety of different species, and then also on wild seas, which I do have a big part of me that loves marine life, and I would love to get to work with things like sharks, rays, seals, penguins, those kinds of animals. And whilst we do have those animals native to Australia, we don't have any of them at Moonlit. But if I hold out hope, maybe one day we will get those species. Who knows? That's not something that's ever been planned. It's just something I would love to do because I just think those animals are really neat. But I also think all animals are really neat, and I love getting the chance to work with all of them. But I got a lot of really amazing experience doing that course. So it was a good way to set me up for the rest of my career.
And then, Olly, your educational experience was at university, you said. And what course of studies did you follow?
I went to La Trobe University and I did a Bachelor of Science with majors in zoology and conservation genetics, which sounds very impressive, but in reality, it was a lot of classroom based stuff. My favorite parts of it were the labs and the practical activities. Funnily enough, the conservation genetics was particularly fun. We were in a lab and we were breeding nematodes, and essentially we would get the nematodes and use this little tool to like pick them out of the agar plate under the microscope and put them in a new one and essentially simulate like bottlenecks, and we would then genotype them and look at how the genotypes had changed based on the 20 nematodes that we had selected at random, and kind of simulating those real life genetic things that happen to populations. So that has served me well, especially now working at a facility that's so focused on conservation. But ironically, I also had a few spare units that I needed to fill. And so I did a minor in psychology, and I chose developmental psychology because I thought it was interesting. And so I did a lot of study about learning and how we learn as we grow up. And as a lot of us kind of know, that whether you're training a kangaroo or a dog or a human baby, we all learn the same way and the principles all apply. So ironically, I have this very fancy sounding degree, but it was my minor in psychology that has actually kind of been the most relevant out of everything when it comes to animal training, especially.
Well, it sounds like you both have really extensive educational backgrounds that helped prepare you for your roles today. And then following those educational backgrounds, you both, it sounds like, went into volunteering at Moonlit, which seems like a pretty lucky gig to get. You had to wait, what'd you say, a year and a half for that, Calum? Yeah.
Yeah, the wait list was quite long because the only times we really had people leave volunteering was either to become keepers or when people were just moving interstate. So they simply couldn't volunteer at Moonlit anymore. So that's why the wait list was so long, is because people really enjoy volunteering. I got a lot out of it. I got to work with so many different species and get a lot of experience just from volunteering. It was really amazing. And so I was really lucky that because of that, I was able to show Moonlit my work ethic and how I enjoyed working with the animals and more about myself. And because of that, they liked what they saw. And so that's how I got a position, because I was able to show them what I was like when I worked. So yeah, it was a good opportunity.
And you're both now, as I understand it, if I remember right from your bios, you're both now on the show team. Is that part right? And you're both now on the mammal team. Is that right? But because you're on the show team, does that mean you don't work exclusively with mammals?
That's correct. So on our show, for our Conservation in Action show, it's called, we want to educate the public on species that they would see in Australia that could use their help and the small changes they can make to help those animals. So for instance, with our owls, they have issues with secondary poisoning, and any animal, habitat loss is a big one. So we definitely mention people can just simply swap to using recycled paper products. That can help owls, that can help cockatoos, it can help gliders, because these animals need old eucalyptus tree hollows to have areas to make nests, to have babies in, or just to live in like gliders do. But these trees can take over 150 years to grow large enough to form these hollows. And so the real estate market for our wildlife is really tough. So that's something that we definitely want to educate the public on, because that's relatable. Everyone knows the struggle of real estate and getting a house. So our animals have it quite tough. So we're able to share that message. And because of that, we definitely have a focus on mammals and birds mainly, because those are the ones that we would love to show off. And they are animals that you'll see quite often. We do have a presentation about our reptiles as well, but that's separate to our team.
Yeah, I know. I've seen both of you share work, I believe, with birds before. And so that's why when I saw on the mammal team, I was like, they do some stuff besides just mammals. So yeah, I figured it was maybe because of the being on the show team as well. So that's really cool. You both get to work with all different kinds of animals all the time.
We're quite spoiled. A lot of facilities will have like free flight shows. So oftentimes when folks say that they're on a show team, they're more focused on birds. So our Conservation in Action show having both birds and mammals is quite unique. But we're manifesting one day in the future, we want reptiles.
So there aren't reptiles in the shows right now. Is that right?
Not in our show currently. There is a separate reptile presentation, so I suppose we need to leave some animals for them. But I know Calum and I both have a big soft spot for reptiles, so we'd be thrilled if we got a reptile or two. But
it seems like the show experience could be really reinforcing for everybody involved, for the people who come and watch it, for you all, for the animals. Calum, you already shared a little bit about this, I think, but could you both share a little bit about what you most hope that people, like audience members, get out of coming to a show? Do you have a goal in mind when people come to a show that you're hoping to maybe change their behavior in some way or change their thoughts in some way? You mentioned a little bit, Calum. Do you have some thoughts on that too, Olly?
Yeah. Essentially, the kind of very base idea of the show, once you kind of boil it down, is if we can bring out these animals and help highlight their natural behaviors and get our audience up close with them, with any chance we can get our audience to fall in love with our native animals and we can create that connection. And then when we kind of bring up like this, this super adorable glider we have here, this little possum, isn't it cute? And people say yes. And then we say, but did you know that it's a threatened species and that its habitat is at stake? And people go, oh no. But we have a really big focus on love, not loss. We don't want people walking away feeling like they're the villain and feeling like everything's a disaster and just what's the point. We want them walking away feeling, hopeful and knowing that they can have an impact and everything's not doom and gloom. So we always kind of make sure we end on positive notes and try and suggest really minor changes that they can make and that they have the power to do. And like Calum said, a great one for just about every Australian animal is buying recycled paper products, which is literally as simple as picking up a different pack of toilet paper to the one that they might normally buy. But making such a simple change, if everybody did it, would have such a ridiculously massive impact. And we also I hear a lot that it's not necessarily always the adults that we reach, but it works for sure with the kids. And I've definitely had parents say to me like, oh, we came to the show last time and the next time we went grocery shopping, my 6-year-old was like, Mum, you can't buy that. It's not recycled. Get that one. So we know it works. And it's also nice to let people know that sometimes the news is very depressing, but there are things that we can do that do have an impact and having people walk away with the, I guess, enthusiasm to try and do little things to help and to have that increased compassion and empathy towards our wildlife. That's, I think, for me at least, is the goal of what we do. And it's really, really nice to hear people walk past after the show and say like, yeah, it's so easy to do. I can absolutely do that. So
I love that. And I love the focus on, or maybe not focus on, but the recognition that sometimes youth maybe are easier to reach or their behavior isn't maybe as established as their parents' behavior. And so they might be the ones who remember and then remind mom and dad about some of the things that they learned, or parents about some of the things that they learned at the show. Calum, did I read in your bio that you worked on, was it called maybe the education team for a while? Did you do something with the youth as well?
Yeah. So we have a school program where schools can come on an excursion to Moonlit, and we take them around and we teach them about the animals we have, and we adapt it depending on what age they are at and what curriculum they are working on at that time. So I worked with prep, so that in Australia, that's the first year of primary school, and then up to the lower levels of high school. I was able to show them around our park and talk to them about the animals we have. And it's very similar to the show in that they're able to make that connection, not so much focused on the conservation side, more so focused on how awesome the animals are and the unique differences between them and what makes them so special and what makes a mammal, what makes a bird, what makes a reptile, those kinds of things. And then as the ages go up, talk more about their lifestyle and how they fit into the ecosystem and why they're so important to the ecosystem and things like that. So as you go up in age, it gets closer and closer to that conservation message. And then doing the show, even though we have, young kids coming in, we do get to talk about that conservation message. And it's such a cool message to be able to spread. And I love, again, being able to suggest those small changes people can make. That another thing that I love about our show. So we did a lot of work with Nick Bishop, who does a lot of amazing storytelling work. And so he helped Moonlit to get a good start on their script for our show so that we can make sure people are taking in as much information that we can give them in a way that they can be receptive to it and not just overload them with information. And towards the end of the show, one of the things we do say is, just by being here today, you have already helped make a change, because we are a privately owned facility, and having people come and visit Moonlit not only helps us, but it helps us with our conservation, and it helps us to look after those species that they've met that need that help, and also other species that they might not have seen in the show, like orange-bellied parrots, critically endangered parrots that we have had a lot of success with breeding and done releases of. Pikelas, which are a native species of mouse that we have started breeding in recent years and again have done releases of. So them coming and visiting Moonlit, having a fun time, coming and seeing the show and just having a good family day together helps us with those species and looking after the wildlife that is so precious that really needs our help.
Yes, I love all of that. Thank you for sharing that. I love the focus on storytelling. And I mentioned it earlier about how both of your passion and dedication just shines through and makes me keep smiling as I'm listening to you. And that's so in line with the what you're talking about wanting people to get out of coming to a show or visiting Moonlit, wanting them to leave with a positive message for behavior change and how they can be a positive part in that, rather than a doom and gloom kind of message about the world necessarily, So I love that. And I loved hearing about, what were those little mice?
Pikelas. Yeah, it's kind of like saying tequila, but Pikelet. It's a good way to teach people how to say it.
Okay, Pikelet.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay, good. Usually people are like, yeah. So that's exactly it. That means I got it. I'm not going to try again. But it sounds like you, if I just want to confirm what I heard, you all bred some of those mice and then released them?
Yeah, so Olly and I haven't worked with them, but we have them at Moonlit, and in collaboration with Zoos Victoria, so the government facilities that are in our area, they went out, collected some, because the issues they were having were genetic diversity and population being scattered, so they weren't able to mesh those genetics because they were so far apart from each other. So going out, collecting individuals, bringing them into captivity, pairing them up, they're quite sensitive, so there's a lot of very hands-off work that happens with the Pikelas, but we had a lot of success with breeding them and then, again, getting released back out into the wild. And from what I've heard, there's been a lot of success with those releases, and they've been able to monitor them and keep track of how they're going, which is really exciting.
Very cool. Yeah, definitely exciting. Thank you for sharing a little bit about that with us. And as far as the show, do you all have a goal in mind for the animals? Do you have something that you hope that animals get out of being participants in the show?
When it comes to all of our like training encounters, the show, we want as much of the animal's life and what we do with them to be voluntary. We want to give them as much choice and control over what happens in their day to day as we have in our power to do. And being part of the show team, we're quite lucky. We have quite a large focus on animal training. And so when our animals come out for the show, they aren't wearing harnesses. They're not on leads. The birds are free flying. We have dingoes running around with, no leads or harnesses or anything like that. And all of their routines are designed to help highlight their natural adaptations and abilities. So whether that's flying, gliding, how agile they are, for some of them, it's how intelligent they are and just the amount of things that they can learn and know. But at the end of the day, we want for them coming out and being part of the show to be a positive experience, something that they find enjoyable and something that they want to do. So I think it's fair to say a part of our job as the humans of the show team is being able to recognize when our animals are choosing to participate or when they're communicating to us that they're not particularly interested for whatever reason on that day. A great example being in the middle of summer when it's very, very hot. Understandably, sometimes certain animals just kind of let us know, no, not interested. And so I think a good portion of our job is also knowing how to handle that situation, whether it's finding out whether other animals want to jump in instead or just knowing how to communicate to the visitors in a positive way that, hey, this animal was not particularly interested today, but thank you for being understanding, because that allows us to give them that choice and control. So I think for us, we want the animals doing the show to want to do it and to have fun doing it and find it a positive and enriching experience.
I love that. And I imagine that can be a really nice learning opportunity for people sometimes to when I know ideally you want the animals to be excited and to want to participate and to come out and do the show as planned. But when it doesn't happen and you're able to explain why you're allowing the animal that choice, I would imagine that could be an impactful learning experience for some people. So very cool. Thank you for sharing all of that. Anything that you want to add to that, Calum?
No, I think Olly explained it really well. And I think it's so amazing that we're able to do that with our animals and give them the opportunity to show off those natural behaviors and get to, stretch their wings and fly out in front of the audience and really show off. It takes a personality to be a show animal. They've got to be confident. They've got to want to show off. They've got to want to be the star and be the center of attention. And so it's really great to be able to provide that for our animals that have those personalities that really enjoy being in front of audiences. So it's really exciting to get to do.
And we're going to move on in just a minute here and talk about some more kind of training specific things about some of your training projects, hopefully. But before we do that, I would love it if each of you would maybe share, do you have either a favorite thing about doing shows or being on the show team, or if not a favorite thing, do you have a particular memory or moment that stands out in your mind of something that was really reinforcing for you?
Something that really sticks out to me is when I was little, I remember very vividly going to a free flight show and the bird flying really close and feeling it almost touch you, because that bird is, sometimes they play chicken with people, they fly really low. And I remember that being a really standout experience for me as a child. And to be able to be the person providing that experience for young kids is something that really brings me a lot of joy. I remember the first time I was free flying one of our barking owls on stage, that it just all came back to me, and I was remembering getting to be in the seat as a child and then seeing people's reactions when we do that brings me a lot of joy, especially when it's, like big guys who are very muscly and they look really, brave, and then they flinch when the bird flies overhead. It brings me a lot of joy getting to give people those experiences, because I think it's a really great way to get to see how cool our animals are. It's also, it's fun for me. So that's something that definitely brings me a lot of joy.
Thank you for sharing that. And what about you, Olly?
For me, I am not afraid to admit that one of the big reasons I love being a zookeeper is getting to be with the animals and interact with the animals, and something that, especially on show team, but also on mammal team as well, we need to have a relationship with those animals. We have to really invest in that trust bank, and it is a two-way street, especially out on stage where, when you are free flying a bird or whatever, like there is nothing stopping them from just off they go. But having that relationship and getting to, be with that animal, and like arriving at work and them seeing you and getting excited, like that always makes my heart very full. But then also when we first walk out on stage with an animal and the animal kind of has their grand entrance, hearing the whole audience go like, whoa, or like gasp and stuff, like I don't think I'll ever get over that noise of excitement from everybody. And also that's, I guess, satisfaction of like, yeah, isn't it cool? So it's also nice to know that I'm not alone. It is a very cool animal. And it's nice to get that recognition from the audience as well. But yeah, that is a very cool animal. We all should love them.
I love that both of your answers also included something about the joy or the shared experience with the humans that are watching the show as well, whether it's the bird flying right by somebody that Calum was talking about, or the gasp that you were just talking about, Olly. I think that's really cool that you not only love working with the animals day in and day out, but also love that connection with the people when they have that shared experience of loving the animals and what they're capable of doing, and who they are, just who they are, very cool. So I have the absolute pleasure, as I've already said, of getting to see a lot of both of your training. Well, maybe not a lot of it. I'm sure it's just a small snippet compared to what you do day in and day out. But I get to see some of the training that both of you do with some of the lovely animals at Moonlit. And I know about some of the projects that you each have worked on with some of the animals there. And I would love it if you would each share about some sort of training, I was going to say project, but some sort of training related challenge or project that you have worked through with an animal, some of the things that you learned from it, and just a little bit about that with our audience that doesn't get to see the work that you do with these animals at Moonlit. So would one of you like to go first and share a little bit about a recent training challenge that you've worked through?
Sure. So I was trying to think of what animal I was going to talk about, and surprising probably nobody, especially from Moonlit and the forums. I'm going to be talking about Pikelet, who is a long-nosed potoroo. For anybody that is unfamiliar with the incredible animals that are potoroos, they're part of the macropod family, so they are cousins, I suppose, to kangaroos and wallabies. They're just far smaller. Highly recommend Googling them. Again, I'm extraordinarily biased towards this potoroo in particular, but they are unbelievably cute animals that are underappreciated in our day and time, in my personal opinion. But we have a very similar animal in our Conservation in Action show already. Her name is Ginny, and she is a bettong, which is another very underappreciated but very adorable animal. You've got lots of homework to do. But essentially, these are both small animals that are terrestrial. They spend all their time down on the ground, and they both are referred to as ecosystem engineers. So they have a huge role in the ecosystem, and they essentially dig through the soil to find fungus and eat fungus and spread the spores, and have a huge role in keeping the ecosystem changing and growing. I think I read it was called like bioturbidity or something really cool like that. But we want to bring them out on stage and highlight how amazing these animals are and the role they have in the ecosystem. However, they're fairly small. They weigh about a kilo or two, depending on potoroo or betong, which I think in pounds is like 2.5 to like 5 pounds or so, using my D&D conversion knowledge. But because they are so small and they do spend all their time down on the ground, it's quite challenging for audiences to see them. So we actually train ours in the show to balance up on this log, and they hop up and down the log, eating some snacks and reinforcement along the way. And essentially they go up a little staircase from behind the log, make a very big grand entrance, hop to one end, turn around, come back, go back down their little staircase into their transport crate. And then we take them home. So it's a simple routine, but training that confidence to be out in the open like that when they are a very highly desired prey item by a lot of birds of prey does take a lot. And Ginny, the betong, she has been doing this for many, many years. And when Pikelet joined our team, she was hand-raised by myself and Sean, our coordinator, hence why I'm so biased towards her. And we target trained her with her little target stick, and the idea was that she would do the same routine as Ginny, the betong, but we were presented with this challenge where when Pikelet was up on the log and on stage, even though we had a target stick and we were cueing Pikelet to where we were hoping she would go on the log at a particular time, she didn't seem to understand what we were asking for. Even though she was great at target training, she was super fluent in that particular behavior. For whatever reason, just up on the log, she just didn't seem to understand exactly what we were hoping from her. We tried so many different things, but she always just seemed to kind of run around a bit on the log, would go in and out of the crate. It just wasn't the like polished, streamlined show routine that we were hoping for, which for me personally was quite confusing at first, because I was like, well, we have the target stick. Like, what else do I do with this? How else am I supposed to communicate what's going on? Because I'm in my mind already communicating, and the betong, that works for her. So like, why isn't this working for Pikelet? But whilst we were trying to deal with this particular challenge, I was also doing some separate training with Pikelet inside of her enclosure, using some fake grass as a station, and we were doing some station training. And I was remarking on the forum about how quickly Pikelet picked up on her station training, to the point where I was even able to ask her to orient herself in a very particular way on the station, and she would pick it up within 1 or 2 sessions. And I don't know what it was that gave me the idea, but one day I just kind of had the thought of, oh, well, I wonder what would happen if we put stations on the log for Pikelet. We know that she's great at target training, but that just doesn't seem to be working for her. But she's also apparently really good at station training. So I don't know, maybe we try this. So I started trying I guess a game in her enclosure where I would have multiple different stations, and I would walk between the stations and use my body position to cue Pikelet onto whatever station I was asking for her to go on. And she picked up on that super, super quickly. And so I tried and cut up some little mini stations to put out on the log to see whether I could get Pikelet to generalize that behavior. And within only a couple of sessions, it became quite clear quite quickly that this was a much better way of communicating with Pikelet, what we were hoping for her routine. She stopped a lot of what was for us undesirable behaviors of like running around on the log and not hanging out near us and where we were standing on stage. She followed us and followed our body position as a cue for where we wanted her to go and how far up the log we wanted her to run. And really, really quickly, we were able to phase out having the target stick. We were able to reduce the size of the stations. And so now we've got some small little pieces of fake grass that are about the size of the palm of your hand on the log, because they're fake grass. They look quite natural in a way. Well, they don't look too unnatural, I suppose is a better way of putting it. And Pikelet is now like a fully fledged show animal. She's got multiple people training her, and the stations just seem to be such a better way of communicating to her, which I think my biggest takeaway from that experience and that kind of problem solving that we did was just, even though it was something I already knew in theory, but just knowing that what works for one animal does not always work for another animal. And sometimes you just need to take a step back and go, okay, well, what are some different ways I can try and communicate this idea to this animal? Because, yeah, something that had worked absolutely fine for forever with beautiful Betong just did not quite work the same way for Pikelet. So it was, yeah, really reinforcing to know that we had found a better way for her, and we were able to work towards what worked best for Pikelet. So yeah, I think that was probably the biggest challenge, but also a pretty big learning moment for me as an animal trainer.
I can definitely relate to that experience, and I'm sure that our listeners can too, of starting to work on something with an animal and it not working with them and being like, but this is the way to do this. Why doesn't this work? It worked with the other, animal or the other 50 or 500 or whatever. So I think that people will definitely relate to that aspect of the challenge. And I love how it prompted you to think outside of the box about ways that you could communicate with Pikelet. Did I have that right? Pikelet?
Yeah. Pikelets are a mini pancake in Australia. We didn't realize it was a kind of niche Australian thing when we named her until we had our first kind of international visitor come meet her. We were like, this is Pikelet. And they were like, it's a what?
Yeah. Well, I always thought it was Pikelet the potoroo until I talked to you all the last time and learned that it was Pikelet the potoroo.
Yeah, potoroo.
That's a great training challenge. And I love that you were able to think through, how can I communicate with Pikelet? And also it sounds like you thought about, what skills does she already have? What foundation communication skills do the two of us already have? We have this station training that we can use in this other context. And there are lots of just fantastic videos of Pikelet in the Animal Training Academy forum. So for listeners who are members of Animal Training Academy, if you haven't already checked out Olly's work with Pikelet, you should definitely head over to the ATA forums to see that. That is in the members only portion of the website. So if you're not a member, it won't be there. But for members, you should definitely check that out if you haven't already. Thank you for sharing that with us, Olly. And Calum?
Yeah, I think the one that is the thing that I want to talk about is something that's quite current. It's dingo teeth brushing, which you know all about, Shelley. You've been following along with that journey that I've been lucky enough to kind of be the guinea pig for at Moonlit. Obviously, everyone brushes their own teeth, and a lot of people train their pets at home to have their teeth brushed. At Moonlit, historically, we have originally relied on bones for natural chewing behaviors to manually clean those teeth. And then as resources and our training skills, especially thanks to Ryan, evolved, the dingoes several of them were trained to do voluntary teeth checks. And then eventually we have worked towards training for voluntary teeth brushing with two of them, Amber and Cinder. But the challenge isn't those two for me. I didn't train Cinder. Our other keeper, Siobhan, trained Cinder after I trained Amber. But currently, me and another keeper, Gemma, are working on our two oldest dingoes, Blaze and Scorch, who have been trained to do encounters. So dingoes, they are a canine that is from Australia that people often misunderstand or mistake them for being dogs. They are distinctly genetically different. They've got longer and sharper teeth. They've got bigger brains and stronger jaws. They can run really fast. They're extremely flexible. They've got nice self-cleaning coats. Like there's so many things that are physically different about them, but also personality-wise, they are vastly different to dogs. They are much more like wolf-like in their personalities, and they can be quite shy and elusive, especially if you don't know them very well, or different individuals always act different as well. So the dingoes that we originally started with, especially Amber, who I trained for our show, she is a pretty confident individual, and she already knew how to do voluntary teeth checks and things like that. So that was, pretty fluid with how that behavior went. But with Blaze and Scorch, it's a little bit different because they've been trained to do our encounters. They've been trained from a very young age to be well-mannered around visitors, not jump, not lick faces, things like that. So that's been the main focus for their training for their lives. As they have gotten older, we have, and after we saw the success of brushing Amber's teeth and how much better her teeth are, we decided that we wanted to introduce this to Blaze and Scorch. However, whilst we've been able to look at Blaze and Scorch's teeth, they aren't trained to do a voluntary teeth check. So we have had to work from the ground up with them, which has been a really cool opportunity, not only for me, but also for Gemma as well, because Gemma has done a lot of amazing training with some of our mammals. She's worked with Ronald the Tasmanian Devil and our potoroos that are out on display. And those are also on the forum for people that want to go check that out. But this is a little bit of a different training plan, and getting to introduce these behaviors with her has been really cool. The challenge that we face, however, is with Scorch specifically, he's always been known to be quite a sensitive individual. Being a dingo, their body language is really important, just like with dogs. You want to be, and any animal, you want to read their body language. You don't want to overstep boundaries. You want to respect them and give them that choice and control and have that really clear communication, because that's how you know that they will be comfortable with what you're doing, and they can opt out if they ever feel uncomfortable. And that's the most important thing, especially when you're doing something that's so in their face as teeth brushing, that's really getting up in there, and you really want to have that clear communication. So with Scorch, we are having to take it really slow, and that's a very different approach to what we've done with the other dingoes. Being so sensitive, we were initially working on doing a chin rest with him, and whilst we are still working on that, we were definitely finding that he seemed very sensitive, almost like ticklish when he was putting his chin on our hands because of his whiskers. And with canines, we know that those whiskers, and any animal, they're incredibly sensitive because they are designed to pick up sensory input, and that's what they're there for. So our hand being under his chin where there's whiskers obviously was a little bit maybe overwhelming for him. So getting him used to that is really important. But as we were doing it, I was thinking about getting to the point of lifting up his lips and using the other hand to brush his teeth. And I was thinking to myself, I don't think this is going to work very well, a hand being under his chin. How are we going to get it on top? Because with Amber, I was just able to move my hand over the top because I have that relationship with her. She's a very confident dingo. We have a lot of trust there. I've worked with Blaze and Scorch for a while, but there was a bit of a gap in the middle of that relationship because I moved to show and wasn't on mammals for a little bit. And so because of that, I've kind of come back in and have had to build that relationship back up. So taking it slowly and modifying the training that I initially had planned to actually follow what Siobhan has done with Cinder, and she's done a nose behavior where her hand is above the muzzle and the muzzle comes to meet the hand at the top. I decided to try it with him. We'd been trialing the chin, and it had been kind of fluctuating quite a bit with our success. With the nose behavior, I did a couple sessions in one day, and he seemed to pick it up really quickly, which was really exciting. I haven't posted this in the forums yet, but I got a video of, I think it was the second session I did with him that day, or maybe it was with Gemma training him after I showed her. He really started to get it. He was bringing his nose to the hand, very short duration, very ever so slightly just touching, but it was very clearly that he knew he had to target his upper muzzle to our hand, which was a really exciting moment for me. I know dingoes are incredibly intelligent, but Blaze and Scorch, especially Scorch, they definitely know that they're almost like cats, you know, they're very strong-willed, independent. If they don't want to do something, they're not going to do it, and they definitely test you. And I definitely think that I wasn't expecting Scorch to pick up on it so quickly, because I was thinking he was going to test us more than he did. But I think I don't know, but it seems like he does seem to enjoy the training quite a bit. And it seemed like he really wanted to do what we were asking of him, which is exciting. And so I think being able to do that, trialing that nose behavior, seeing how quickly he started to pick up on it, gives me a lot of motivation for what he's able to do, because I felt challenged in that I was concerned that he was going to be a little bit sensitive the whole time, and that we were going to have to go really slowly, and we might even need two people to be able to brush his teeth every time because of how he may react to us trying to do all of these things around his face, because it is quite a lot. But that small snippet of him bringing his nose up to the hand and definitely seeming to understand what we were asking of him really made a big, change in my brain. I was like, oh, actually, maybe I've been, maybe labeling him, I suppose, or my understanding of his behavior previously with other things has maybe impacted on my belief of what he's capable of. So whilst we're not there yet, I'm really excited to see how this training develops. And I hope that this small thing that I've seen does continue to develop into something more, because it does seem like he really understood, and I hope that he continues to enjoy what we're doing, because I'm really enjoying seeing them develop with their training and come further along, because they do some simple behaviors like sit, drop, target, they lay on their side, they'll station, we can put harness on them and walk them and things like that. But this kind of behavior is something new to them. So it's really exciting to get to see and develop with them, being 11-year-old dingoes that haven't done this kind of thing before. It's an exciting opportunity, and it's a good challenge that I'm very much enjoying. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's a lot of fun to watch as well. All of the dingo training that both of you and the others at Moonlit do is always a lot of fun for me to watch. I love hearing how both of you ran into roadblocks or challenges with these animals and were able to just kind of take a step back and think creatively about it. It seems like in both of the cases, it was a relatively small tweak that allowed you to change something and see big results, or the indicator that there can be big results, as in the case of Scorch bumping that nose up onto that tunnel target above the nose. Very, very cool. I love getting to watch both of your training all the time. So thank you for sharing a little bit about it with everybody else today here as well on the show. Before we wrap up, I would love to give you each a chance. If there's anything that I haven't asked you about yet that you would like to share about before we leave, anything about your work at Moonlit, or anything you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
I definitely think if people are ever curious about what zoos do and the kind of training we work towards and the things we want to do with our animals, if they're ever curious about those kinds of things, I do think the forum is a really great opportunity to be able to check out. I think it's just Moonlit that really posts on there, but at least the work that Moonlit does, because there are so many different projects that are always happening, things that have already happened, plans that are finished that are still back there that you can go and follow along the journey with. And I think it's a really great opportunity to get a look into the world of zookeeping and the work we do with our animals. It's not just animals in enclosures. We give them some food, we get to look at them, and that's really cool. Like, we do so much work to build up relationships with them and give them an opportunity to exhibit those natural behaviors, get their brains working, get them thinking about things. There's so much that is a part of the job that you don't really realize just by looking at it from the outside. So I think it is a really cool opportunity. And Olly and I have always talked about how cool it would be if another facility, another zoo were to start using the forums like we do, because then we'd be able to look at what they're doing, and it'd be so cool to get to see. And whilst we do know people at other facilities we can kind of get information from, I do think it's a really great chance for people outside of the zoo world to kind of understand what our work is and what we do.
100%. It is a really cool way for somebody like me who is outside of the zoo community to get to see a little peek into that world and the wonderful training that happens there. And the forums, there are some other posts, and we have some new dog posts recently, a couple dog forum posts and some cat posts. But you're right, it's a lot of posts from Moonlit in the forums, which is fantastic. But definitely there for other members to take advantage of as well, to share their work and track projects in the way that you all do so well. And Olly, anything that you would like to share before we wrap up here?
I promise I'm not being paid to say this. I do want to give a shout out to Moonlit. We are quite unique in terms of the facilities, like in our particular region in Australia, but I've never really heard of another facility that puts so many resources into the development of their keepers, specifically when it comes to animal training. We are lucky enough to have Ryan Cartledge join us at least twice a year. We managed to ship him over to Australia for a week. Ryan Week, I think, it's like Christmas. He comes over and we get to just do a whole heap of animal training stuff. And a lot of us love animal training so much. And we all, as keepers, get the opportunity to either assist others in their animal training or to have our own animal training projects. So like Pikelet was one of mine. I now get to work with one of our dingoes and a kangaroo. I don't think I've ever really heard of another facility that has like almost every single one of their keepers have their own kind of personal animal training project. And so to work at a facility that values animal training and values the voluntary participation of their animals and cooperative care training so much, I'm just very grateful to work at a facility where that is such a high priority. And I think if I ever had to change facilities for whatever reason, I think that is one of the massive things I would miss about being part of the Moonlit team. So very grateful to work somewhere where that's something that's so important to them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I actually, Calum, when you were talking, you said, thanks to Ryan, when you were talking about the dingo training and the cooperative care, I think. And I wrote that down on my notes because I was going to follow back up on that, because I was thinking about asking you all about what Olly was just talking about right now, the wonderful antecedents that Moonlit appears to put in place for you all to help ensure that you have wonderful resources for training. And also what you all were talking about earlier really struck me too. I can't remember which one of you said it, but somebody talked about Nick Bishop coming and doing some sort of education, I believe, around storytelling about the best way to connect with audience members in order to have them understand the kind of conservation messages I think that you were trying to share with them. Is that a fair way of putting this? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, we definitely find that Moonlit wants to build all of us up to be the best keepers we can be. And they definitely value people like Ryan Cartledge, Nick Bishop in the work that they do and the experience they have. And I think it's really amazing that we get given those opportunities to learn from these people who have all this experience and grow and become better at our jobs so that we can do better by our animals, by training or by representing them in terms of storytelling. Like all of those things are really valuable. And we're so lucky that Moonlit values that and understands the importance of those things and these people that bring that knowledge to us and can educate us further. And it's really amazing because obviously when we first started learning from Ryan and things like that, we were the babies, we were still learning. But now that we've been at Moonlit for myself almost 6 and Olly almost 7 years now as keepers, we get to watch the newer keepers learn from Ryan and grow and flourish and get all that experience. And we get to talk with them about those things. And it's really exciting to get to be on the other side of that now and get to see people grow and learn. And it helps us to appreciate the opportunities we've been given even more because it's just so amazing. We're so lucky.
Well, I'm very lucky and very grateful that I get to learn a little bit from both of you and from some of the other folks at Moonlit as well. And it sounds like it's a wonderful organization to work for. I'm glad that you both have that opportunity and that experience and that you're now able to share some of your wisdom and experience with the newer keepers like you were just talking about. That's really cool. Just like the name of the podcast, you all are making some wonderful ripples out there in the world. So thank you for sharing about some of those with us today. For folks who are listening and want to find out more about Moonlit or maybe wanted to get in touch with either one of you, are there ways that people can do those things?
In terms of wanting to learn more about Moonlit and see what we're doing, Moonlit, of course, has social media pages, so Facebook and Instagram and a TikTok if you're keen on that. And we are also lucky enough that we're able to post about a lot of our animal training, and we've gotten a lot of really cool responses from the public who do actually seem quite interested in a lot of the animal training that we do. So it's really cool to be able to share that with the general public. So highly recommend following those. There is also the Moonlit website. If you just Google Moonlit Sanctuary, I can't speak for Calum, but if anybody did want to get in contact with me, I am on Facebook. I'm the Olly Jacobs that works at Moonlit.
Yeah, I agree. Our social media is a good way to check out Moonlit. And in fact, he didn't say it, but Olly is one of the people that runs our social media. So if you like the content, that's mainly Olly doing all of that work. He does a really great job of it. And it's really cool to get to see all of those things. So if you do have any requests for training that you want to see, he's the one to talk to about that. And yeah, I'm totally down to chat to people if they have any questions about training. Same thing. I'm Calum Torcasio on Facebook, so you can find me there or on the forums if you're on there. There is a messaging function if you can't find me on Facebook. But yeah, I think following Moonlit in that way is a great way to keep track of what we're doing and the amazing work that we do. And there's lots of cool content that gets posted on there. So it's, yeah, awesome to keep track of.
All right. Wonderful. And I follow Moonlit on Facebook. I'm not sure if I follow it on Instagram or not, but I love the Facebook page and I like stuff there on all the time. And you know how Facebook does that thing, like you've been recognized as a biggest fan or whatever. I got that for Moonlit one time. I don't know
Excellent.
I don't know that I claimed the badge. I don't know that I've ever claimed the biggest fan badge, but I should have for Moonlit for sure. But I did get it. So it's a wonderful, wonderful social media that you all have, that Moonlit has out there, and you post some really cool stuff there. And yeah, for folks who are members of Animal Training Academy, like you said, that's in the, you have a lot of your work in the forums there that people can see even more detailed work. So lots of cool places to see the wonderful work that you and others are doing at Moonlit. So Calum, Olly, from myself, from everybody listening today, on behalf of ATA, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us and share a little bit about the ripples you're making in the world.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and I am very grateful that you had us on.
We do, of course, appreciate all of you tuning in as well. And if you have enjoyed this episode and are interested in carrying on the conversation about working with the animals in our lives in the most positive, most fun, and most choice-rich ways, then as mentioned at the start of this episode, the Animal Training Academy community is waiting for you. Head on over to www.atamember.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn more about what members are describing as the Netflix social media platform for behavior geeks. That's it for this episode, though. Thank you so much for listening. You'll hear from us again soon.